One of the most beautiful evidences of God being at work in a person's heart is when He chooses to move in a person's life in an unusual way. So this morning I want to ask Dennis and Pat Mock, and I want them to share with you today. Dennis and Pat.
On March the 18th of this year, I submitted my resignation as a partner in the law firm in Decatur where I had practiced for some 13 years. It had been a very successful law practice in terms of income, in terms of influence, in terms of power, in terms of prestige. All of those things which the world holds to be important. You might ask at age 38 why I might walk away from that. And there are two answers. The first is that God called. And the second is that there was the growing realization in my life that I would never really have a sense of contentment and fulfillment apart from God's will for my life at any one particular point in time. God used a number of things in the call. He used the Word which He had worked into my life in His Spirit. And He used a missionary conference that was going on at the church at that particular time. And I simply knew that God was calling me out. And I claimed 1 Thessalonians 5:24, faithful is He who calls you, and He will bring it to pass. What I did not know is that He would not bring it to pass immediately. For the next several months, God very graciously provided productive things for me to do. I studied the Bible and wrote a teaching outline. I taught several Bible studies a week, and I prayerfully considered several different ministry opportunities which the Lord brought my way. But I had no sense of peace about any of those opportunities, and so I waited, and I waited. And it was not until late August that the Lord showed me the next step in this process. And that step was a 4-year-long process called seminary. Next Friday, I leave for Dallas, Texas, and Dallas Theological Seminary with my family to start a 4-year adventure. We've learned, I believe, several lessons that we could have learned no other way. We've learned to walk by faith and not by sight. We've learned to wait on God in faith, to trust Him, to rest in Him, to rely on Him in the face of adverse circumstances and in the face of no quick answers. We've learned that submitting to God's will generally is one thing. Submitting to the time and manner in which He works out His will is another thing altogether. It was difficult not to run ahead. It was difficult not to manipulate circumstances and people. And it was difficult not to take matters into our own hands. But I think more than any other single thing, perhaps, we learned that God is faithful. I want to encourage you to simply give God that opportunity in your life to demonstrate His faithfulness. Pat?
If there's one thing that we've learned in these last 8 months, it is there's a real misconception sometimes about Romans 8:28. All things do not work together for easy. They work together for good, for His children. And the last 8 months have just been a real classroom opportunity for us just to trust and rely on Him in ways that we've never had an opportunity before. I praise God just for what He has done in our lives, if no one else ever saw another thing, through giving us this opportunity to trust Him. And so I encourage and I challenge, no matter what the little thing that might even come to your mind, be obedient to it. It says in Deuteronomy, we can choose life and prosperity or death and adversity. And it comes by choice, and it comes through obedience. And so I just want to challenge you this morning just to listen, because you wouldn't want to miss out on the blessing that God has for each one of us. Thank you.